Hello, everyone. This is Kerwin, and welcome to another episode of Travel Talk. And today we're going to be talking about requesting wheelchairs and the nightmare that it can be. Let's go. So, I recently had to travel with someone who um, had to use a wheelchair at the airport. Now, the airlines, they call them special request, and they allow you to request special services. Now, wheelchair is one of the services. Now, I'm not gonna share my screen, but um, here's what they have. You can need a wheelchair to get to and from the gate, or you can walk, but you need help only if there are stairs. You also have one that says cannot walk, need wheelchair assistance. And I'm bringing my own wheelchair slash mobility device. So there are different levels of service that you can get, but this is a service that the airline provides. Now, I'm going to use airline loosely because what the airlines do is they farm it out to companies that does this. Now, I have a lot of problems with how this works because I just don't think if you're picking up somebody in a wheelchair, you shouldn't expect that person to give you a tip. Um, the company you're working for should be paying you properly because you know what? They get paid properly by the airline for every person that they pick up or drop off. Um, and it just seems wrong to ask somebody who has limited mobility to give you a tip after. Because if you think about it, so I get to the airport and I check in at my thing and I get a wheelchair there. That wheelchair person is going to take me down to the gate. They're going to leave me there because they have more stuff to do. Then they're going to come back and it may not be them, probably more like it's another person who's going to come back because all the airlines do is just call and say, hey, we got 4 wheelchairs to board, and they send theoretically 4 people to come help you board with those people. And then that person is going to expect a tip again. So now I tip one person, now I need to tip another person. Then I get off the flight, and that person going to pick me up and take me to baggage claim or take me to my connecting gate, and I'm going to have to tip that person again. It's ridiculous, that whole tipping thing. But anyway, that's not the purpose of this rant. Um, So these companies are paid by the airlines to pick you up and take you to your connecting gate. So what happened is I get on this flight and we get to the connecting city. The person who's supposed to, there are 5 wheelchair people on this flight. I get outside and there's only like 2 wheelchairs and 2 persons. So my person I'm traveling with gets in the wheelchair and we get up to the front and she stops and she's like, well, I have to go get more people. I'm like, why? You can't push 4 people. You can only push one person. So she said, well, there isn't anybody else and they have to just get them off the plane, put them in this area by the gate, and then we wait. So she goes back and she gets another person. And then I see another lady who had a wheelchair. She broke her leg because she was telling somebody that at the other airport. And she's using crutches to get off the plane because they can't wait. They have to go to their connecting flight and there's nobody to take them. So I said to the girl, I go, well, can I just do it? Can I just push? She goes, no. I go, okay. So I said, well, we need to go. Luckily, we had, a little leeway to play with. But sometimes you don't. So we get over to this holding area, and she said, first said she had to go ask her supervisor if I could do the pushing. She went to ask supervisor, and supervisor said no. So then she came back, and this poor girl, she's the only one working. The 2 supervisors wouldn't even help. They did nothing except stand around and order people around. And so eventually she said, okay, let's go. So we're going. And she tells me that the people were passing, people didn't show up for work today. And so because people didn't show up for work today, there's a backlog. But I'm like, so the airline pays you to pick these people up, and the airline doesn't really care because nobody from the airline asked me any questions. And the lady saw us waiting there, and all she was doing had a sheet of paper short with connecting information for people. She didn't care because it's not her responsibility, right? It's the responsibility of the company that they hired to take us back and forth to the gates. So we're going to one gate, and we pass this big board. And as an aviation geek, I always look at these departure boards, and I noticed that our gate has changed. So said to the young lady, I said, "Hey, our gate's changed. We're at this gate here now, B3, I think it was, instead of B5." So she drops us off, and by the time she drops us off, she stages the wheelchair. Because sometimes what they do, they'll drop you off, they'll put you in a regular chair, and they take the wheelchair because they need it for somebody else. And no, they don't clean these wheelchairs. Um, and so she needs it for somebody else. And so they normally take it. I was very surprised that she actually left the wheelchair there. So then she leaves it, and I'm not paying attention. This lady comes up. Well, I noticed that the gate changed. So I said, "Hey, we have to go because now we have to go to 822. This is Charlotte. We have to go to 822 from B3, which is far. And person who's traveling it, they can't walk that far. And so this lady tried to steal my wheelchair. So she comes over, and because her husband needs a wheelchair, we're on the same flight. And so she comes over and she tries to steal my wheelchair. Well, this guy next to me, she's like, "Ma'am, no, you can't take that wheelchair. That's their wheelchair." And the lady goes, "Okay." And so she goes and she finds another wheelchair, some corner somewhere, and puts her husband in it, and she goes. Reason why she goes, there is no agent for the airline. There is no agent for the wheelchair. You'd think, you know, you have all these people at this gate. You know, you have wheelchair people on the flight. The gate changes. Wouldn't somebody come over and say, "Hey, the gate has changed. Let me call some wheelchair people to come over"? No, there's nobody. I even looked across the gate on the other side and there's nobody. So I'm like, you know what? We're going back in the wheelchair. We're leaving. So my person had to go to the restroom. So they went to the restroom, and then I pushed them all the way over to the A gate. Now, while I'm pushing, I pass a ton of people because they're dressed in a special uniform. They're dressed in a special uniform. They're just walking around. I don't know what they're doing. None of them stopped me and said, "You know what? Let me help you." Nobody. So then I get over to the gate and we sit down and we wait. Um, and then so what's supposed to happen is that as wheelchair people, you board first, which they did do. But the guy who did the pre-board, he showed up like 5 minutes before boarding. I don't know where he was. And the poor girl, she was there. The other girl was there by herself the whole time, handling all these customers who had questions. Because some people just, I don't know why. You don't, if you already have your seat, you don't need to ask any questions. You're in the right place. Everything is on information. They don't go bug the agent. Um, Let people have real questions. Like myself, who didn't have a seat at the time because we were booked on a later flight and wanted to get on an earlier flight. And we were on the standby list, but they didn't clear it properly. And this is all a revenue ticket. But it's a whole other story. So then the agent came and she took the wheelchair that we had brought. And because she wanted to know, well, do you need the wheelchair? And my person was traveling, we said, no, they can actually walk. They just can't walk far. And yeah, and the jetway is sometimes far. And then so the guy, he boards people and he's in a rush now. So he doesn't give people time to pre-board. He starts boarding his concierge key and his group ones. And I'm like, well, the wheelchair people haven't even gotten on the plane yet. We get down there, the pilot's like, "Stop," because the plane wasn't clean. They hadn't finished cleaning the plane yet. So the whole thing was just such a cluster. And had if my person was traveling by themselves, they would have been left stranded because there was zero communication from the airline. There was zero communication from the company that handles the wheelchair. And so they would have just sat there waiting, and then nobody would have said anything, because I don't know when the next flight at that gate was gonna be. So it's like, um, I paid the airline for my ticket. They offer me a service that they farmed out, and they're not making sure that that company does it. And all the companies doing it in the day say, oh yeah, we transported 1,000 people, and airlines like, okay, great. Here's X $1,000. I don't know how much they pay per person. And they pay. And nobody's going, doesn't seem like anyone is going in the back end and doing that. Now, I'm going to complain to the DOT. It gets worse. So I get back, and now I'm calling the airline, and the automated service is so stupid. It says, I told her, I said, I want to speak to an agent. I want to make a complaint about wheelchair. It goes, oh, you want to make a flight booking? I said, no, I do not want to make a flight booking. So then it goes, oh, what date do you want to travel? I said, I do not want to make a flight booking. And then it got mad at me and hung up. So then I called and I spoke to this guy, and he's telling me I need to go fill a form out. I'm like, dude, I am not filling out any forms. I want to speak to a person. So then he gave me a number, and I have to call this number. I have to leave my information, and then they call me back. I'm like, you realize how frustrating this is, right? And I'm calling about an ADA complaint, and you are telling me to jump through all this hoop. So I've made my phone call, and I'm waiting to get a response back. And they need to respond to me. They said by close of business tomorrow. So I will have an update. So it is frustrating when you travel with someone who's not very mobile, and the systems that they have in place, because the airline has farmed it out, because it used to be better than that, but they farmed it out. And the people that they farmed it out, that doesn't really care. And then they're asking people who are sitting in a wheelchair for a tip. Ridiculous. You should never ask somebody from a wheelchair for a tip. I mean, that company should be paying you enough money so you don't have to do that. It's just crazy. And then there was a guy, not on this trip, but I heard somebody complaining, and they said they flagged down a guy, one of those things you see running around the airport, because they needed a ride, and they said no. And it's like, okay, your job is not to judge me by looking at me and letting me know, because that person actually needed mobility. They have a mobility issue. They don't look at whatever look it looks like, and they got refused. And I get it, right? There are people who misuse the service, but if someone flags it on, you cannot ask them if they're disabled or not, because you don't know. I mean, they could have hobbled to that section and they're there. They probably can't walk very far because they get out of breath. You do not know. So you cannot ask people anything like that. Your job is to take people from A to B. Do that. And make sure that your company takes care of the people that are running through. The airport is also responsible, because the airport is responsible for you once you're on the airport property. And apparently the airports don't really care. And this is not the first time I've had issues. Another time, the person arrived at the airport, and there was nobody there, nobody to do the wheelchair, and they started to walk. And then we couldn't communicate with them, and now we had no idea where they were. And so the airline agent went looking for them, and eventually they found them. But it's like, airlines, if you're offering this service, don't leave it up to the contractor that you've hired, because you know what? If something happens, I'm not suing the contractor, I'm suing you. And when I complain to the DOT, I'm complaining to the DOT about you. Not complaining about the contractor, I'm complaining about you, because I had business with you. You gave it out, you farmed it out, you need to go figure it out. But anyway, tell me what you found out whenever you travel with and requesting a wheelchair, or requesting assistance. And also, people, clean those wheelchairs. Good grief. I don't understand. Clean those wheelchair. But anyway, rant over. This is Kerwin with password.com and cruisingaltitude.com. Tell me if you've had any experiences with getting the airlines to fulfill wheelchair requests. Talk to you soon.